¿Qué puedes decir de lo poco que sabemos de nuestros vecinos?
Just in general?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's a project that I started in 2000 or 2001, before September 11th, and the project really changed as issues around privacy and surveillance became more pressing in the US. Even though the project is based in Britain, I think that issues around access and privacy became very critical in the United States, and it sort of shifted some of my attention in making the project. It's a project that's mostly about a British social science movement, but it's also about cameras in public space, both as instruments of surveillance but also instruments of pleasure. So it's not purely about surveillance, it's really about the complexities of photography in public spaces.
Es un proyecto que empezó en el 2000, antes de los acontecimientos del 2001, y es sobre la privacidad de la sociedad, de los que vivimos en ella, y que es más sobre las cámaras y el público y cómo la cámara interactúa con el público y más bien con la sociedad.
¿Es solamente en Inglaterra?
Is just in England?
Yes, the film is entirely shot in England, and the subjects are British. I was very interested in these specific instances of historical uses of photography.
Only in London?
No, actually, mass observation was central, sort of, it was all over the country, but they were focused on the north of England. They did a big study in Blackpool and in Yorkshire.
Fue hecha en Inglaterra y por supuesto fue toda filmada ahí.
What is mass observation in political terms?
The mass observation movement was started by people who had leftist politics, but it wasn't primarily a political movement. I mean, in some ways, they were unusual in that they wanted to produce an anthropology that looked at themselves, but there were all kinds of class politics that they were aware of, but they didn't want to make a political statement. They thought that by people learning about themselves through their mass observation of them, they could then make political choices. But they also had a kind of absurdist interest. They were interested in surrealism. There were a lot of artists involved, and so they were also interested in how surrealism could reveal hidden aspects of society. So it wasn't primarily a political movement, it was also very disorganized, so it wasn't a central idea. So many people had different ideas about what it should be, and because of that I think it broke apart. There was a lot of conflict in the group, so it's hard to talk about it as one thing.
Empezó con gente de la política,
but they didn't have a political agenda.
Pero ellos no tenían una agenda política.
And because there were a lot of different ideas,
porque había diferentes ideas,
there was also a lot of conflict.
Pero también había mucho conflicto.
Some people were more interested in a kind of poetic, surrealist.
Pero también había gente interesada en como de una manera más poética de investigar sobre las personas, sobre la sociedad.
And some were more interested in a kind of social observation.
Y de observar a la sociedad.
Also, they didn't have regular financing.
Y no tenían un financiamiento regular.
So they had some money from private companies looking for market research.
Mass observation movement is today.
Yes, It started in the 1930s, and then it existed until World War II. It's a complicated history, but they were actually recruited by the Ministry of Information during World War II as spies on British citizens. And it didn't reveal very much, but it broke up the whole group. And a lot of people had to stop because of the war. It got revived after the war as a market research firm. Then, in the 1980s, it returned to being a kind of progressive social science movement, and today it's still this progressive movement. It's based in University of Sussex, so it's become institutionalized, but it remains progressive in its politics, and it's much more focused now.
I'm
Sí,
worried.
listo. About Ambulante, what means Ambulante for your film and for you? Yes.
It's a great opportunity to visit. I'm also really impressed by the concept for the festival, that it's in all parts of different parts of Mexico, and there's a chance to really have discussion. That it brings people out into the public sphere to discuss these films. I didn't know the festival before, so it's really special to be here, and there's a kind of commitment to a dialogue that I really like about this festival. But I just arrived last night, so...
¿Algo? Yes.
¿Cuál ha sido la respuesta que ha tenido el documental en este tiempo
What is the answer of
de la gente?
What is the answer of the people that sees your movie?
I think the film was finished in 2005, so it's been a while, but because there is this aspect, a large aspect of the film is about public space and privacy and photography. This issue is so present, it's so critical right now, that mostly people ask, well, what do I think about the place of the camera in public space? And it's a complicated issue, and I think the film really speaks to that question for people more than other aspects of it. It kind of surprised me that they're very focused on surveillance, and for me the film is about surveillance, but it's also about this issue of pleasure in looking. So I think the contemporary political situation brings out that aspect of surveillance in the film.
Well, I think documentary films in Mexico is just for a little bit.
A little people?
Only the elite,
Yeah.
university people, and
Do you think it's because of the distribution, of the way they're distributed?
yes.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the films...
it's a part of it's education, and I don't know what more.
Do you think the people are not interested about documentary films?
I think maybe if they had more exposure to more experimental or more challenging documentaries, they might be more interested than we realize. But maybe I think the audience can surprise you.
I think in Mexico, most of the people think is bored with
But they maybe if they haven't seen them, then if they see them, maybe they'll recognize that it's more
They will think.
because some of the best, I think it's the same in the U.S. But I've had some screenings in places like in schools that aren't, in even with high school students in regular high schools, that they're really interested and they have excellent questions, and I don't want to underestimate their potential as an audience. But it's true, mostly they show to a very small number of people.
Maybe it's because we didn't try to other people see the documentary film.
Bueno, pues muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thanks. ¿Listo?
Listo.
Gracias.
Dame una tarjetita.